Hello, everyone. Welcome. I see some people start to filter in. Hello, we're going to get started in just a moment to let everybody kind of come in and get settled. But before we get started, we'd love to get to know you a little bit better. So if you're comfortable, you can throw maybe the name of your organization and where you're located in the chat. That'll kind of help us understand where everybody's tuning in from today. Where are you located, Beth? Are you in Pennsylvania?
Yep, I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm right outside of Philadelphia, where we always forget that spring is 55 degrees and raining.
Yep.
Everybody here likes to say, we didn't have a spring. I'm like, we did. We just aren't willing to accept what our spring is really like. Anybody that's here today from the Mid-Atlantic region, I'm sure you know exactly what I mean.
Yeah, so I'm in Toronto and I completely understand what you mean as well. We're slowly inching our way into spring. It looks like we have people from Minneapolis, we have people from Vancouver, Ottawa, Wisconsin.
Wow, you're definitely covering it right.
Yeah. Okay.
My father-in-law's from Winnipeg, so.
Oh, nice.
I have a lot of love. Yeah, we're up in Canada a lot when my kids are little.
Good. Okay. Welcome everybody. We're gonna get this show on the road. So again, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to be here. My name is Meredith. I am Keela's head of marketing. We also have Stephanie, Keela's marketing specialist, helping us out today on the tech side of things. You might see her in the chat box or answering some of your technical questions. So feel free to say hello to Steph. And before we get started, I just want to start the session today by acknowledging that here in Vancouver, we are on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and give thanks for their generosity and hospitality on these lands and waters. So if you are new to Keela, welcome. Keela is a complete nonprofit management software that helps you deepen donor engagement, centralize your data, and most importantly, raise more for your cause. And just before I introduce our speaker for today's session, I just have a couple of housekeeping items to go through. So today's session is about 45 minutes in length, plus a 10 to 15 minute Q&A session at the end. Don't forget, you can adjust your closed captioning settings at any time if you need to by clicking the button at the bottom of the screen. And throughout the presentation, please feel free to write any questions that you have in the chat box or in the Q&A, and we'll be sure to get to as many as we can at the end. Some of you submitted some great questions in advance as well, and we're going to cover as much as we can towards the end. And in the chat box, please remember to select everyone when you type so that all of our guests today can read your comments and questions. And finally, the webinar is being recorded. You will receive access to the recording and the slide deck by the end of the week. So with all of that out of the way, I'm really excited to welcome Beth Brodowski, founder of Iris Creative Group. Beth works with nonprofit leaders to focus their audience and move them to action. And for 25 years, Beth and her team have developed nonprofit branding, marketing, and fundraising communications specifically for nonprofits. She also runs Nonprofit Toolkit, training to grow in-house marketing skills for nonprofit staff. She has hosted the podcast Driving Participation and speaks frequently on nonprofit marketing nationally. So we're very excited to have Beth with us today. So without further ado, Beth, take it away.
Thank you so much, Meredith. I really appreciate you and Stephanie hosting me today, and for all of you that are taking time out of your day to come and get involved in this conversation today. Thank you. And so please do, like, these questions and these sessions are so much more fun when people contribute their comments and ask questions, but also give feedback on what your experience has been. I am a firm believer that, you know, we're not the only experts in the room. We might have crafted the slide deck and the plan for today, but you might have had experiences trying things that worked or didn't work or using tools. So share them, put them in to the chat so that we can all learn to be better nonprofit marketers with all the tools and resources that we all have in this group today. You know, there's a large group of you on today, and we all probably have some great ideas. And I'd love to hear what's working for you as well. So I'll be keeping an eye on the chat as much as I can, but Meredith will be paying attention to it in the background and making sure that she catches anything that we can. But if you have a question that you want to make sure that we don't miss, put it into the Q&A, because it usually moves a lot slower than the chat if you listen to me and jump in and participate. So one of the things that I hear, in fact, probably the number one thing that I hear from most nonprofits, is that despite the fact that money is always a challenge, there's always budgeting constraints. But you know what? All organizations have budgeting constraints. With the 26 years that I've been in business, and then the 8 years that I actually worked at a nonprofit before I started my company, the biggest constraint was time. I mean, does any of you resonate with Daffy here, and this feeling of like just wishing the clock would slow down, or that there was just more time to do more of the things that need to be done? Because at the end of the day, you must always feel like that. One of the things that we often lovingly call you all is a slash marketer. And so many times at a nonprofit, things don't go exactly what you maybe even thought they were going to go when you were hired. And the role of marketing can sometimes not be what we think it is, right? Yeah, the nonprofit designer construct is real. Absolutely. And so the thing is, marketing is one of those things that people either love or they hate, or sometimes they think it's super, super important until, something goes wrong and then it's marketing's fault. Or when nothing's going right, then you just need to get some marketing to fix it. So a lot of times marketing, there isn't always even a true marketing role at an organization. Or any of you in this situation where like your job isn't marketing, and it's really sort of everyone's job. And you have a whole bunch of different people at your organizations that are executing things and touching things. And then what happens with that, a lot of times, have you seen this, that there's no central control and management. There's no guidelines sometimes, or there's guidelines, but there's nobody with authority to make sure that those guidelines are held. And so that can create this everyone's doing their own thing situation. And if your job is kind of marketing or tangentially marketing, maybe you've had that experience where you're standing in the back of a conference room and somebody pops up some slides that you're pretty sure their 12-year-old did with those rainbow colored transitions because they thought that they were cool. And you think, oh my gosh, this isn't us. This isn't what we look like. And you're just horrified. Or someone goes off to create their own brochure, because it's like they're all doing their own thing, because there isn't anybody with that job. The other thing that sometimes happens at nonprofits, or any of you in this situation where it's nobody's job and nobody's doing the things that need to be done. And so a lot of times the people that are creating them, which may even be you, don't necessarily have the technical skills to do the things that you need to do. A lot of times these jobs turn into catch-alls for everything. When I first worked in the 80s in a nonprofit, my very first job in my nonprofit was so specific. My title was technical illustrator. And then I moved from there to graphic designer. And then I moved from there to art director. That just doesn't happen as much anymore. You guys often have jobs that are, as wide as an ocean. You were hired to be maybe a marketing coordinator, or maybe you were hired to be the director of development or a development officer. And you made that, somebody said, could you just post this one thing on social media? And you did it to do somebody a favor. And the next thing you find out, your title is now director of development / director of communications. We call you all slash marketers because you ended up with that slash in your title that you maybe didn't expect, right? Other duties as assigned. Exactly. Right. And so you might have thought you were coming in for this role, but because of a need, because it's no one's job, you ended up having to do it. And so what ends up happening is a lot of times option C is it ends up being this impossible job, this behemoth, ridiculous job description that I see all the time that says we're looking for whatever, director of development / communications, or director of communications. I'll give you this, or vice president of communications, a big giant title. But basically what it means is we expect you to be a writer and a graphic designer and a videographer and a web developer and a PR expert. And we want you to be able to understand and develop strategy, but also that comma better be in the right place. And can you meet these deadlines? It's just this ginormous job that becomes impossible to manage a lot of the time. And to then try and manage it while staying on brand, your answer is probably actually D, right? That you have probably all of the above, that your jobs and the role of marketing in an organization is a little bit of all of this. And that's what makes it really hard to manage these roles, to execute your fundraising campaigns, to execute your marketing, your awareness, all of the different things that you need to communicate when you're in this role. And so then what happens is things end up what we calling it, like it ends up kind of wandering off of brand. You get a little brand diaspora happening when you're managing your communications. And either it's because a lot of people are different doing things, or a volunteer said that they would do something and they wanted to do it their way, and you might not have the authority or the skills to be able to tell them, oh, no, actually, that's not what it needs to look like. Because in many organizations, it's the board that are in charge, and the staff's job is to support the board in their goals. And so you might not have the power in your organization to say, this is how things needs to be. And so you end up with things where the colors aren't totally aligned, the fonts are all a little bit different. And it's easy to think, well, that's fine. We're a nonprofit, we're small, we don't want to look like we're all that. But the thing is, the purpose of branding, the purpose of communications is to connect your mission to that marketing execution. It builds that bridge across the way by keeping things in alignment. And when you look like you're an organization that is clear and consistent and things are professionally executed, what that does is it builds belief in your ability to do the things that you say you're going to do. It builds trust, and trust is required if you want people to give you money. People do not give money to organizations they don't trust. One of the things I say all the time is people do not give to your organization to fuel your existence. They give to fund their own dreams. And so they give from a place of their own values and the things that they care about. And they want to believe that if they join your program, come to your school, join your membership, donate money to you, whatever it is, that you are going to be an excellent steward of both their money and an excellent deliverer on that cause. They're looking, it's an investment that they want repaid back. And so a lot of times you have programs in your organization that you might have a master brand, or you might have a sub look. This happens to be, it's called the American Littoral Society. And what that means, it took me a while to understand what the word littoral meant. It means that they handle conservation for the coastal area. And in this case, primarily the coastal area of the state of New Jersey. And underneath of their overall master brand, they have a program called Shuck It, Don't Chuck It. And it's an oyster conservation program. They're a small staff. They're pulled in a million different directions. And they did a pretty good job. They have some really great brand assets. They came up with that name, which is genius and clever and really fun. And they've come up with some cool pieces. And so they do all these different things, but because there's different people doing things, including some partners that add there that says an evening on Sandy Hook, that was created by one of their partners. And so there's no consistency. And so by putting together a toolkit for them, we've been able to shift that things are looking all over the place to giving them some brand guidelines, some color guidelines, some font guidelines, some visual assets, and some templates that all add up to giving them, we almost call it marketing. Anybody that's as old as me might remember Granimals back from Sears, when you could, if you had 2 purple hippos, that meant that you had a pair of pants and a shirt that were going to match, and you were going to be like the coolest kid in 3rd grade. So it's this, how do you mix things and match things to make sure that they're all going to work out? And so one of the things that we noticed going back here is that they use different colors of blue. So rather than fighting it, We actually gave them 2 different colors of blue to work with. We standardized the yellow, we standardized the font with this fancy font that looks really cool, but also gave them some basic fonts, some plain regular fonts to be able to write in, because not everybody's going to have access to the cool, hip, decorative font all the time. So when you're building out a brand toolkit, there's a couple of things that you want to think about. So the first thing is, a great reason to do a brand toolkit is to distribute the workload. And one of the things means you can distribute the workload to less skilled people. And so by less skilled people, it may mean, I hate to say it, may mean you. You know, it may mean that you work with somebody and you're the less skilled person that has to execute this. Or on your team, you may be the person with the skills, with the graphic design skills, with the writing skills, but there's other people that are going to be, creating PowerPoints at 11 o'clock at night, and maybe you'd like to not work at that time anymore. Maybe you don't want your phone to be ringing saying, I need a change, when you're trying to get your kids to bed or have your family life. How can you possibly bring in other staff members or even potentially volunteers to share the workload of creating things, and also share the workload of distributing messages? A great way to make this work for people is to use familiar tools. So we're a creative firm, and we typically, when we have our say, we use Adobe Creative Suite. So we're using InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop. Well, any of you that have ever worked in Photoshop know that the word just and Photoshop should never be in the same sentence, right? There is no just Photoshop, just like there is no, can you just edit this video? There are tools that require a certain level of proficiency and typically training to be able to do a good job utilizing them. And you'll just burn way too many hours if you try and train people to work in your world. It's so much better to give them tools that work into their world, especially if they are people who are in this is no one's job. It's not my job to do this, but you either need them to help you out, or they want to be able to utilize things and make changes and edits. So you might need to get to that point where you can give them things in familiar tools and distribute that workload. You may need to invest in some key assets from professionals. You might need to get some core templates, some core design assets created from somebody that's a professional, or you may be that professional. You may be that professional that's creating those key assets. Thinking about what you might need, what assets those things are going to be so that your team can create what they want, is incredibly helpful, very good in time. It's time well invested. And then you want to think about the other thing is, how can you support your supporters in sharing? So I found that there's kind of 2 reasons to create a toolkit. One is to share the load of creation, and then the other is to help get support in distribution, like those social media ambassadors, or sometimes people will call them influencers. In my world, now, not everybody necessarily agrees with my definition, but an influencer is somebody that has a community and they have influence on it. Now, that may be somebody in your community who has a lot of followers, who is maybe just a well-known name in your community. Maybe you have that. Maybe you have a board member that people recognize and follow and listen to. They may be an influencer. The other way that people use the term influencer is, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could get on Oprah? Wouldn't it be great? These people are, wouldn't it be great if that person that's on TikTok that's always talking about this thing, or talking about something totally different? Wouldn't it be great if this famous person with a big following would talk about us? And the important thing to know is that people that work as influencers do it for money. And so if you have the budget to pay for them as a marketing strategy, as an influencer marketing strategy, you can absolutely use that tactic. But in many, many cases, those people get paid for, those are placements, those are sponsorships and placements, things that look like somebody's just talking about this great, cool thing that they want to talk about. Sometimes you get lucky, but you don't want to live your life in hope marketing. Hope marketing is when, some famous person tweets about you once and you think, wow, how can we capitalize that? And then all of the energy of your organization goes to, how do we capitalize on this one random thing that happened? you want to focus on the things that you can own. Absolutely take advantage of it, but don't put all of your hope, all of your energy into like random acts of marketing. Build a consistent, repeatable strategy underneath of it, and a toolkit will do a lot in helping you do that. So let's talk about what's in a toolkit. Like, what do you want to deliver in things? And so the first aspect of a toolkit is, what is your brand? What are your brand assets? So you need to do some work in advance. Maybe you already have them, maybe you know them, or maybe you need to start pulling them together and making sure that you have different versions of your logo. Do you have a version of your logo that's a doesn't have that white box behind it? When you have a JPEG file of your logo, it has a white box behind it. Do you have a transparent version, which is usually a PNG file, which is a version of your logo? Do you have a black version of your logo, a white version of your logo, so that people can put it on top of a photograph or on top of a color? Have you created the assets? So many times when we're working with a new client and we say, can we have your logo? They go and right click on their website. Has anybody ever gotten those logos? If you're doing like a sponsorship program, have you ever gotten logos that are like super low resolution and have that white box behind them? And there's only so much, right? You can only do so much with that, right? So, but PS, little side tip, if your sponsors happen to be very large companies, go to a website called brandsoftheworld.com, and they have high quality, often vector-based files. Like if you get lucky and you get Amazon or Nike, who knows, but it's not always just that big. But if you have a large sponsor and they give you, believe it or not, you would think that like a large company would know what they're doing and send you good quality stuff. But trust me, they need toolkits too. Oftentimes their marketing people have no idea where their assets are. And so you have to get things. So one of the cool places you can gather together materials and distribute them as a toolkit is Canva. Are you guys Canva users? Anybody, you know that there's a nonprofit level of an account for Canva? Fantastic. You know, we're a creative firm, so we used to be very like, Canva. And I can tell you, even as little as 4 years ago, Canva was not what it is today. I would not have been here 4 years ago preaching the message of Canva, but it's fantastic. And it's even more fantastic if you can get your templates made. You know, like we usually make our templates in Adobe InDesign and Illustrator and in Photoshop, these professional tools, and then we pull the assets that we create in to Canva. Canva just did a big update in the last 2 weeks where they have added even more abilities in their branding section. So if you look over here, I don't know if you can see my mouse. See this brand link that you have over here? You might not have paid a whole lot. You might have thrown your logo up there when you first started in Canva. Go back and take a look at it this week, because they've added much more things, more logos, colors, fonts, all kinds of things that you can add in that make Canva an even better tool to manage your brand. And so that's sort of the branding part of Canva. So you can also have different projects in Canva, which I'm sure you guys know about. And so what we did for this organization is we started by creating, we had, of course, had a meeting, found out what kind of projects they needed. But what this organization specifically needed, they got a grant. And believe it or not, you can get a grant that incorporates marketing help. So they got a grant from NOAA, the National Oceanic Institute. I don't know exactly what the letters spell, but the people that manage the oceans for the government. They got a grant, and embedded into their programming grant, they embedded in some content to create marketing assets and materials for them. And so, but with that limited amount of money, they then have to market this program for years. You know, they're not going to get more money every single year to do it. And so what we did was we created a couple of different things for them. We created all of these things, which are ready. We call them ready to use graphics. So they're social media graphics, email headers, things that they can put onto their website, lots of different pieces that we've given them. Including we broke down all the pieces of that infographic I showed you on the first page. All the different pieces are in here, and we've delivered them to them 2 ways. So one way that you can do it is you can just create things that are done and say, basically treat it like a Dropbox folder and say, go here and download our stuff. And if Canva is too complicated for your people, you can do exactly this in Dropbox. You can also do it in Google, like Google Drive. many people have Gmail addresses. So this speaks to go and deliver in a way your people are comfortable. Even if you love Canva, you still have to create an account to get onto Canva, to get in there and get things. That may be a hurdle that prevents your volunteers or your ambassadors from participating and doing the things that you need to do. So you might be better off saying, this is great, we love working in Canva, but we're going to create things here and deliver them to our volunteers or our staff members as a downloadable file in Gmail. So start by asking people, what programs do you use? Where are you comfortable? Where do you spend a lot of time during the day? The more you can align with their current behaviors and not ask them to do something totally different, the more likely you are to get compliance from your team and assistance from your volunteers. The other thing that you can do in Canva is you can take things that you've created in Canva or elsewhere and create them as templates. Canva now has layers. Who is excited about that, right? That you can now do layers. So that means you can put a layer into something. You can create a whole graphical background that people can't touch and then put type on top of it that people can touch. And you can then control that brand a little bit better by locking down things that they're not allowed to break, and that you're going to come in and say like, oh, why did they move that there? Because no one has any concept of white space or spacing. If there's words, they are going to try and fit them. So the best things that you can do is kind of limit what they can do in here. And then on top of that, so we gave them the static posts that we're ready to use. We gave them editable but constructed posts. And then because they have to do a million other things that we don't even know yet what they have to do, we gave them assets. So there's a whole folder that we uploaded. I think in Canva, we call them, they're called elements. So we gave them all the little illustration pieces that we created for them that we built together into these tools. So don't just think about when you're in Canva, think about creating a place for, your materials that you've created. Think about, how do you create your brand? How do you create your assets? How do you create your ready to use tools? And what of all of those things you're willing to let people play with in a way that they're not going to break it. So someone's asking if you're able to track usage of assets in Canva. We've actually been looking into that because we're building these toolkits for people and everyone wants to know that you can't really track who logs in. I don't, as far as I know, you can't track. Does anybody else know? I don't think that they have that ability yet. It would be amazing if it is. So Emily, since you're asking that question, I'm going to, in a minute, I'm going to show you a different way that we're doing it so that we can actually track that, because that's something that is really important to you. One thing that you can do is you have a graphic that you have in Canva. So I'm going to go back there so that you can see it. You've got these graphics. So you can download these graphics, or if you have them already on your screen in Google, you can, if you go into Google, like Google search, and then click on images, there's a little, like a little camera icon next to it. And you can click on that and you can upload one of these, like say you want to see, is anybody out there using these graphics? You can upload this graphic into Google and Google will search the web to see if anybody is using this graphic anywhere. So that's sort of a backwards kind of sneak attack way that you can do it. It probably won't show you things that are behind walls. So if somebody has put this graphic up on their Facebook page and their Facebook page has privacy on it, you're not going to see that. So there's not a great way to search in the social space as well, but you can, there are some tools that you can do that with. Okay, so that's Canva. So that's one way to go about it. But you may have people that do it. You may have some skills, or you may have some people that have kind of different skills that Canva may be too creative for them or not creative enough. And so in addition to creating tools for a program, or a campaign, you can just create basic brand assets for your organization. So this is an association that's in DC. And they had a new logo that they hired a designer to create. And then we came in when they needed brand style guidelines, and they needed to create a look and feel. So it's easy to do a rebranding and get a new logo and think, yay, we're done, we have a new logo. But you still have to figure out what all your stuff is going to look like. That little graphic that you created for your logo, does it have to be used with the logo, or can we use it as a graphic element? You need to make some branding decisions around that. And then in this case, we gave this organization, there, as you can see, they're a very wordy organization. And so we gave them some templates in both, we gave them some things in InDesign and some things in Word that their team can then take, they've now embedded the fonts on their system that they have. And, and PowerPoint too. So we've got PowerPoint, we've got Word, we've got InDesign, all different things. But we had a conversation with them around, okay, now that you have this new brand, what are the materials that your organization needs to create and use most often? And especially the things that, like in this case, on the bottom right here, that's an accreditation assessment, which is one of the things that they do. It's actually, a 40 to 60 page document that has lots of charts and tables. So we created a baseline template for them so that when they get new different accreditations, they can flow it into a format that's already been created. So the cool thing that you might, if you're not somebody that's using Word a lot, believe it or not, there's kind of sort of styles in Word. You don't think about them as somebody that, if you're somebody that usually uses InDesign, we have paragraph styles that we can lock stuff down. And when you click on that button on the style, it's, PMS 186, 10-point type with 12 points of leading and in Futura. Like we can lock all of those font specifics down. And most of the time when you're looking in Word, you're seeing Calibri or maybe Times Roman, but you can use all the different fonts. And over here, if you look on the right, there's a styles pane, and you can actually customize and set styles that use your fonts, have your sizes. You can control spacing. There's a lot more controls in even Office products and so this is Word, but it also in PowerPoint. A lot more things in the styles to create than you would expect. The downside to Word is if you backspace over things, that style gets blown up. It's still over here in the style pane, but you have to reset it. It doesn't lock it in the same way an InDesign or a typography or typesetting tool would have. Now, a little sort of pro tip for you: when you're in Word, if you decide you want to create styles, Word already has basic styles in it. So they're going to all get mixed in together. So what we do is we put either a bullet or an asterisk next to the name of our custom styles. It both flags that it's a custom style, but when you put an asterisk next to it, it pulls it to the top of the list. Because in Word, the only thing you can do is say all styles and then all styles in use. And if somebody hasn't applied a style, they might not see a style that's available to them. So by putting that asterisk, it then puts all of the styles at the top. There's your little trick. Also very important, you have to know what your styles are. How are you going to tell people this is how I want it to look unless you've made some decisions about how things are going to look? So I would recommend you pick, if you're trying to change how things look, or if you have something that already exists that you really like how it looks, go through it and take a look at it. And then figure out what fonts are in it, figure out what colors that you're using, figure out whether you're somebody that uses lots of white space or lots of color blocks, and put some of those details into a document that, it might be a booklet, it could be a Word document, it could just be a one-pager that says, please use these fonts, please, that kind of thing. And then it's an easy little guideline for people to be able to follow. Another way you can do it is in a website. So I showed you Canva, we talked about Dropbox and Google Docs, and we talked about just doing basic templates and putting them on a drive on your server in InDesign or Office. You can also create a microsite and use a small website. You can either create a portion of your website, a login portion that's like locked behind a staff login or something like that. So this is a microsite for volunteers that we're creating for Yale Law School right now to support their reunion. And what it's going to hold is everything from social media graphics to like scripts for the reunion volunteers to go ask their classmates to contribute to the class gift. So there's lots of different ways that you can deliver information and resources. Interestingly enough, even within this microsite, there's one group of pages that have charts and graphics that have to change constantly. And even at Yale, we're using Canva to do that. So they're going to be we're creating a template for them in Canva. And then that template, they'll be able to save out as a JPEG and as it gets updated and changed so that they can manage their own website in-house. You can go super simple. You can just email people things. So I'm actually speaking on a nonprofit consulting conference in August. And every few weeks, the people that are running the conference send us an email with, here's some materials for you. Here's the latest post we want you to share. Here's a link to share. You know, this is a lot. They did a lot of yellow highlighting. I have to say, I'm not sure I'd recommend that to everyone. But you can see that there's links to sample copy, links to social media copy, a link to a LinkedIn event. Sometimes your volunteers are not necessarily at, shall we say, ambassador level. They haven't necessarily signed on to say, yes, I am in and I really want to help you. You know, I'm a committed volunteer to share whatever. Maybe it's a campaign, maybe it's a giving day, maybe it's an event that you're doing. So you might have those people, but you might have like your board members that you just want to say, hey, here's an email, here's some copy. Could you just copy this copy and grab this post and put it out there? And if they're people that love their email and that's where they're used to interacting with you, great way to get things to them. Another nice thing to do with toolkits is to either customize things for people or allow people to customize things. If you're an organization that does events where you're going to have speakers, or maybe you have an awards program and you have a lot of different awardees. If you can give your speakers or your awardees or your committee, maybe you've got a committee, wherever you've got people that are a little more tuned into what you're doing, they can become ambassadors. Because if you give them something customized with their picture on it and their name on it and links to why they're involved in what they're doing, people have egos. We like to share stuff about ourselves. So cater to that, use that to work to your advantage to get people to share on your behalf, even if they haven't necessarily raised their hand and said, I want to be an ambassador for this program. Oh, you volunteered to speak, or you're getting this award. You know, I'm sure you want to share this exciting news with your family. Here's some posts, you know, or here's one post. Here's something with your picture and your face on it. People are going to love to share that in their own feed. So, you know, that's one way to do it. So then these are ones that we put into Dropbox. So this was another organization. They were having an expo and they had a lot of sponsors. So we created a whole set of generic sort of, hey, about this event post, but then we created custom graphics for each one of their different sponsors for the event so that they each got their own toolkit. And when I say toolkit, that can mean any of these things. It can mean Canva. It can mean a Dropbox. A lot of what we do when we're creating what we call an ambassador toolkit, where we really have gathered a group of people together who have volunteered and said, we want to share about this thing that you're doing. We want to support them and make them feel like they really know what they're doing and that they have everything that they need from us. So we typically create a document. Usually it ends up becoming a Google Doc, which has posts in it. It has links to pictures in it. It has ways to get to the stuff that's downloadable. It has ways to get to the stuff that's editable. All the different things that we can do. We even include a table of contents so that people can quickly find what they want. Another thing that can be really helpful for ambassadors is to give them ideas. So some people we have found want to use, I want to grab that picture, I want to grab that post, I want to change my name and send it out and be done. That's it. That's all I have the capacity for. Some people don't want to use your stuff at all because they want to do their own thing. And so we give them an ideas guide. You know, it's sort of like when you get I have this great cookbook. I think it's called Eating Well. It's a great cookbook and it gives you the whole recipe. And then there's a whole section on the side in the cookbook that says, you know how you could do that? And it gives you ways that you could modify that recipe if you're vegan or vegetarian or gluten-free, or if you don't like those spices, here's how it could work with these spices. If you don't like rice, you could use it with noodles. And I'm always experimenting with different ways I can do it. And I love that it doesn't lock me in. Same thing. Okay, you don't want to use our graphics, but here's some other ways that you could participate, celebrate, create your own thing. You know, keys to success, all different things that we're giving people so that people, here's how I like to describe it. When it comes to your brand, if you lock things down super tight, you better be prepared to police it and execute it. And that usually takes capacity. As I said, nonprofits usually are struggle, like you're time strapped. So if you don't have the capacity to create all the stuff yourself and give it to people, or to police out there what they're doing, you need to figure out some range in your brand. So you can't keep your brand super tight, or you're going to be really unhappy standing in the back of the room looking at people's PowerPoints a lot. You need to figure out, I always call it, what's the range of your brand? How far are you going to allow somebody to ride their tricycle between the driveway and the fire hydrant, between the driveway and the next stop sign? Like, what is that brand cattle chute that you're trying to make it not so wide that nobody recognizes that this is you, because everybody's doing their own thing, and not so narrow that people go behind your back and go rogue and do what they want to do because they feel like my sister, it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. You all know those people. So you can give people, this is their set. This is their toolkit. We gave them all kinds of different things. Now, this was a huge day. It was a 24-hour giving day, just happened at the beginning of March. It was a statewide giving day for the state of Delaware. The clients that we work with enrolled 100 college students to volunteer, and then they worked with nonprofits. But we gave all those volunteers this toolkit, and they had all of these assets to work with. And then here's what came out of it. You know, people had these assets and they were using things and changing things. And some people just posted it exactly how it was. Some people popped their logo on it and called it a day. Some people customized things more and did different things with them. But we gave them a variety of different things to work with so that they could all flood the state of Delaware with this campaign. And it was fantastic. Fantastic. This is just a screenshot of a tool called Keyhole that showed what happened on Twitter. And there were just thousands and thousands of posts that went out, thousands of people using it, you know, lots of engagement. And one of the statistics that we discovered at the end of this is that when you had a committed volunteer paired with a toolkit, those organizations raised 31% more than the organizations that didn't. And that's a pretty big statistic. So thinking about the impact that getting the right people to say yes and help you, either creating things and or distributing things, and giving them a good set of well-branded, well thought out assets to work with, can really actually have a huge financial impact on the events, the campaigns, the different things that you're working with in your organization. And so, boy, I managed to get through that pretty quickly today. It's a miracle, Amanda. That is what I have for you guys today. Now, interestingly enough, that last project that I just showed you, the Delaware-based Giving Day, I had the opportunity to bring on Jen Sayani, who is the Director of Community Engagement for that organization. And we just did an hour-long discussion on, so how did you find these these ambassadors? How did you train them? What did we give them? And we just really got into all the depths of that specific program. And we have that for you. So those of you that offered to share your email address with us, we're going to send you an email with a link to that so that you can just for free go in, check it out, listen to what Jen has to say. She was fantastic. And I hope that will be really helpful for you. And if, you know, that's great. So I know we probably have some questions here. What do you have popping into your box?
Yes, we do. Okay, let's get into it. Lots of good things. So we have a question from Tara. When is the best time and what is the best way to ask volunteers and donors to use the branded items that you're giving them?
Okay, that is a fabulous, fabulous question. And so of course, the answer a little bit is it depends. You'll get a little bit more of that from listening to what Jen says. If you watch this webinar, we're actually on Thursday starting a 4-part series, a 4-part class in our nonprofit toolkit program. So we have a training program that we offer, and we're doing this 4-part series that's going to really get into how we do this for giving days. So the second class in the series is all about finding ambassadors and giving them those assets. And so we're going to get into it in depth there. In addition to that, I would say that the best way to get people on board is to talk to them about it early. And when you've had some successes, make sure that you're showcasing it back to those people. So, say you're having an event, you're going to probably have a committee for that event. As people are inquiring and you're inviting people to be on the committee, you want to talk to them about this idea of becoming an ambassador. And the other thing I would say is also you need to make sure that you as an organization are clear on what you mean by an ambassador. Are you asking somebody that when we email you an image, could you please post this occasionally? Or are you going to be creating a comprehensive toolkit for them that you're really asking for them to partner and share their online presence with you for the duration of this event? And how much are they willing to do? So really, you want to start by having really, really transparent conversations and say, either make some decisions about what you're looking for, or if all of those things are okay with you, have conversations with people and say, hey, where do you spend your time online? Are you comfortable sharing some things on behalf of this organization about this program? Are you looking to really jump in and deeply participate and get involved in the marketing and sharing of this? We will give you everything that you need. Or based on your capacity, would a few posts be helpful? Really, I would say have an open conversation. I would definitely talk to your board members and expect them to get involved, but start by having a conversation about what involved could mean for them. If you have a board member, a whole set of board members of 75 and 85-year-old people, and you're asking them to get out and create things on TikTok for you, you're probably, I don't want to make assumptions, but you may not get the result that you're looking for. So that's why I talked about making sure that you're aligning your ask of these people with tools that they're most familiar with. So the first place I would start with is thinking about what you want. The second place that you can go to is figuring out who in your community is most likely to get you what you want, and then have a conversation with them about how they can do that for you, what you need to create for them to make it helpful. Was that helpful? I hope that was a helpful answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes perfect sense in terms of meeting people where they're at and understanding what their goals are, so that you're not wasting your time too, right? In terms of asking people to do things that they're never going to do.
Right. And to Samantha's question here, Samantha's asking about, do you recommend having a formal ambassador team or a more casual team? The answer is both can work, but also both cannot work. I've seen people try to create a formal ambassador team, kind of instilling, this is what we need you to do, please do this for us. And people were like, that's a little more than I signed up for. And they didn't take the action. And since all their eggs were in that basket, things didn't work out. Right. I've also seen people put together an ambassador team and not give them the tools that they needed, and they hope marketed it and nothing came out of it. And then I've seen people with casual teams, very casual teams. Sometimes those people go out and just create their own stuff, and it's just magical. So really, I would say you've got to have conversations with your leadership, with your capacity, look at all these things together to figure out which is the right pathway for you.
Amazing. Yes, that sounds great. So we got a question come in from Danielle. So are you aware of any particular grants or foundations that could give nonprofits funding to do this kind of branding work? Or even where to, sounds like Danielle is in Canada, but even where, they could start looking to find these kinds of things?
Oh, I know. Isn't that like the $1 million question that we all want to know the answer to? So the good news is, I can't remember which month it is, in a couple of months, it might be May. I think it might be coming up pretty soon. I am actually bringing on a really good friend of mine, Amanda Pierce from Funding for Good, into we have a whole series that we call community webinars. They're free webinars that we do for everybody. And I'm bringing Mandy on because Mandy is a grant writing genius. And we're actually going to be talking exactly about this. If you need to get marketing supported by your grant funding, where do you go, or how do you sneak in the medicine into the sugar, kind of situation? How do you I don't mean sneak, of course, but how do you embed what you actually need into what people are willing to pay for? So we're going to be talking about this. So if you're on here and you haven't yet given Meredith your email address and you want to be included on that, you can obviously find us at all of these places. So you can go online and sign up for our list if you haven't put your name on it, or just let Meredith know so that we can get you. We try and do our free community webinars every other month. so that we're getting these conversations out there that people need to be having. So that's one answer is Mandy's going to come on and we're going to be talking about it. The other answer is there aren't really any, like, in a dream world, there used to be like the Knight Foundation for the Arts used to do things like this, and it was great. Right now, I'm not seeing a whole lot. Mandy might have better resources for it. But the best way to go about it, I would say, is talk to your actual grant funders and tell them this is something that you need. Because the more people that say marketing is real and marketing is a thing that's important, and for-profit businesses need marketing in order to get people to attracted to their organizations. Why wouldn't nonprofits need that same sort of marketing support to get people? We've all got to get people to know who we are, care about what we do, and take the actions that we want. That's marketing, so we need that. So talk to your grant funders about it. Maybe they have some suggestions for other grant funding organizations that are maybe more supportive. And if you find out about them, please email me and let me know so that we can build a list of places that are willing to support this and understand that, like, without operations, work doesn't get done.
Yeah, we get that question a lot at Keela too, and there are grants and things that exist for investing in tech and all of those kinds of things. And we're also happy to help if anybody has any questions about that. We got a question for Dan. So I know we've talked a little bit about, external stakeholders, but Dan is wondering how you can engage a board of directors and a staff team who have never been asked to promote your organization. How can you engage them with these toolkits?
Right. I often, when I, go into like live sessions, I'm like, everyone raise your hand if your board does everything you want them to do. And everybody's like, oh, if only, right? It's really, it's hard. And so the best thing I can tell you is don't try and go from 0 to 100, especially if you don't have board job descriptions yet that include it. And if you don't, I would start there. I would start with bringing your board together to partner with you on helping writing their job descriptions and talking about these kind of things that you would value from your board members, especially because there are many people that would love to be on a board, but they don't have a lot of money. So they can't always contribute, they can't always contribute financially in the way that you might like them to do. What if we lived in a world where a board member can contribute? Like, maybe if you figured out what's your value exchange, if you're asking your board members to contribute $500, $1,000, $20,000, whatever you're like, this is what it takes to be on our board or on our committee. And you figured out, like, what is an equal value in awareness building for that. And you got people, maybe it would open up maybe a second tier. Maybe it's not a board. Maybe it's a second tier. Maybe it's a committee. Maybe it's something to say, hey, if you want to participate and serve this cause, but you're not at a place where you can contribute at this level, here's a different way that you can contribute to this organization. Brainstorm ideas, let your board contribute ideas, because if you say, this is something that we need, what are some ways you guys think that we can address it? They're going to come up with the ideas that they're willing to do versus you coming up with ideas that you're not willing to do. It's kind of like in marketing, when blogs were all the rage, everyone was trying to get their executive director to blog. And if your executive director doesn't live to write, it was always going to be an uphill battle. So I was a chief of an organization that really wanted, we're a marketing organization. We needed to market, but I just don't have the time to write. And so we started a podcast because clearly I like to talk. And so we found a way to do marketing in a way that worked with my time and my energy. I guarantee you, if you invite your board into this conversation and say, look, we need support in this because I was gonna say, I almost say we're drowning here, but don't go that way. Don't go to your board from the perspective of hand wringing. It's kind of like I don't believe that you should go out with your annual appeal of like, oh my gosh, we're not going to make our annual fund. And then what are we going to do? It goes back to the first thing that we talked, people want to trust you. They want to believe that you're good stewards of their money. So if you're like, we're really struggling here, people, it's a lot more energy for somebody to help keep your head above the water than it is for them to like be the wind beneath your wings, right? Like they want to be your wind. They don't want to be your buoy. Does that make sense? You know, so help them be your wind.
Yeah, I love that. And Allison just commented in the chat, good stewards and making a real difference rather than coming from behind.
Exactly, Allison. Yeah. Yeah. So you have to make them feel like they're making a real difference. And when you invite them to say, hey, not here's a problem, here's an opportunity that we have. Here's a way that we really think that we can grow and expand our footprint. Every client I have ever talked to has said, we want our audience to be everyone. And I'm like, that's not possible, because unless you're willing to like offer karate lessons for the people that want karate lessons, then your audience is not everyone. Like your audience is some people, and you're best off serving the audience that love you most, and then looking at the likers. Aim for that center of the circle and work your way out, and do the same thing with your board. Start with the people that are most involved, see what their ideas are, and then see how you can translate that out and out and out.
Yeah, that's great. I know boards are such a tough kind of thing to navigate. So I love that, getting creative and engaging them.
But what does the board like to do more than anything? Give their opinions.
Yeah. Yep. We've gotten a couple questions about messaging and consistency. So we got a question from Belinda. And Belinda says, I make tons of content, but sometimes I stray from our style, and our social media can come across as messy. How would you recommend we get more organized and hone in on staying within our branding?
Ooh, okay. How much time do we have? So first of all, I would say, Belinda, I teach on this subject all the time. We are a brand strategy agency. So we do brand strategy, brand development, and brand management. So like this conversation kind of falls into the brand management world. But you know, if you follow us anywhere, I talk about this all the time in our Focal Point newsletter that's free on LinkedIn. I'm constantly talking about branding and consistency and all of this stuff. And so so sometimes I would say it's a challenge to get there, but it's about making decisions. It's about making those decisions of how tight is our brand, how wide is our brand. It's also a matter of having additional assets beyond just your logo and a color and a font. You know, you might have, like, you might decide, well, our layout is going to look like this. We teach a whole course on graphic design. Like, what is your style? What is the look and feel of your general materials? You know, if you looked at, you know, going back even to here, let me see if I can go back. So like, look at these things. So this is an organization. So this look came from United Way, that little bar with all of those different crazy colors in it. And we were given that logo, the Do More logo, that has that line of all those colors. And so as a creative firm, we said, okay, so we've got the font, we've got this logo, but this logo has this look to it. And you can see just even in here, we've done a bazillion other things with it. We took that sliced up lines and we've made it, you know, a top and bottom graphic. We filled a circle with it. We make, if you look over here in the middle, we call this a picture frame graphic. And then we even use those angled lines, you know, if you're, this is for a giving day. So, you know, you see those thermometer graphics, we use those lines. Can you see, look at these across here, like low, and then a little higher, and then a little higher. Unfortunately, I keep wanting to scroll here, but we took that graphic and we used it in a lot of different ways. And so it's cohesive. Now, this is a very dramatic look. You know, this specific style isn't for everybody. You know, going back here, where's this guy? Like, this is a completely different look. But for this one, you can see we've got, you know, a color palette with, and if you look over here on the bottom left, you'll see a graph that has a bunch of other colors in it. And then if you look on the right, you can see there's a green dot and a yellow dot. Those are the green and the yellow. They're the same green and yellow in that chart. But what we've decided for their brand is that the primary color palette of the blue, the white, and the gray is going to be like 75% of the look. And this secondary color palette of these other colors, they're going to be like very subtle, like it's the throw pillow in your room. It's not the walls. So that's an important thing. So just when we're starting to talk about brand and figuring out that look and where you want to go, I would say a great place to start is coming up with some, we would call them brand elements. This, like, we're going to do a box with one curve on the bottom. We're going to do bars of this. We're going to use that logo as a background image in this particular way, and then make some decisions around looking at your whole color palette. How are you using those colors? Are you somebody that likes to flood a space with hot pink? Or are you somebody that's like, we're going to use a hot pink as a bullet and that's it? You know, that's a great place to start with how much or how little. And then the next thing to look at is your fonts. So this is, as you can see, this is an organization that is a pretty straight lace. They have this sort of simple stuff. Sometimes with an organization, that's it. It's these two fonts. You got to use them, enjoy. With other organizations, you might need a little zhuzh on something. You know, I have another talk that I do where I show an organization up an event we did that was in breast cancer. It's a breast cancer organization, and it was a healthcare system that was running it, and their colors were purple and gray, and they had really strict brand guidelines. So we did this whole breast cancer event design in purple and gray, and everybody's like, well, that doesn't look like breast cancer, because the light pink color sends a message. So that, like, you have to figure out, like, where's your range? You know, when are you willing to go off brand? You know, and if so, how much? So this is all that process of figuring out how wide are your cattle chutes. Does that help? I hope. And then I would say, like, we've got some free things that you can go and look at and read. Sorry, I just scroll through all of these. That I hope will be helpful for you.
Amazing. I love that analogy of, like, are you the throw pillow or is it the wall? I think that makes perfect sense.
It's so funny. We literally just wrote a focal point article last week about how analogies are an amazing thing to help people understand, to make that very first marketing leap. And the first marketing leap people have to make is knowledge and understanding. They can't get to the point where they care about you or take action until they understand. And so an analogy, amazing, you know, everybody understands a throw pillow.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that brings us to time. Thank you so much, Beth, for all of these tips. I'm sure everyone on the call today learned a ton about how to maximize toolkits and start using toolkits if you aren't yet. So thank you again. Before we go, I just want to let everyone know that there will be a very short survey that will pop up right after this session. It should take you only about 20 seconds. So we would greatly appreciate hearing your feedback. We also have our next webinar coming up Tuesday, April 18th with Merrick Theobald from BitPay. Merrick is going to be walking through everything nonprofits need to know about cryptocurrency and accepting crypto donations. And Steph is going to leave a link to register for that webinar in the chat. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Beth. Please feel free to reach out to us or connect with Beth on LinkedIn. And you should receive the recording and these slides by the end of the week. Thank you again, and have a great day, everybody.